Hello, dear friends. Okay, it's been a while I've done a live, but tonight we're going to talk about the narrative and how we get born into a narrative. Think about it. You're born, and you're born into a certain family, you're born a certain gender, you're born into a certain culture, and all of these things are given to you. So you're this innocent being, and based on where you're born into a certain narrative. And that becomes your story. And the narrative of your parents becomes part of your narrative. Whether you're poor or you're rich, there are certain attitudes towards certain things. The narrative of the culture of what is allowed, what is not allowed. If your parents practice a certain religion, that narrative becomes your narrative. And when you're little, you have to comply to the narrative because you depend on those people, culture, for your survival. But as we grow up and start to become a little more conscious, we can become present and see the narrative for what it is, a narrative, and begin to explore it a little bit more consciously, realizing that the narrative is based not on reality but on perception of reality. And let me illustrate with a simple example. Imagine this: you and I go together on a beach trip to Greece in August. First of all, the narrative is it's so hot there. It's silly to go that time of year. But Greece is a big country, and there are parts of Greece that are more to the south that are hotter in August, and parts of Greece that are more to the north that are not as hot. So if we listen to the common narrative, we may be discouraged to go to the seaside in Greece in August altogether. But if we actually think about it and do our own research, we can find places and beaches that are not as hot, that are located a little more to the north than the south. So, despite everybody else telling us we're crazy, we go. But get this: I'm a morning person and I want to go to the beach in the morning and stay there until like noon. And you're an evening person and you like to go to the beach at sunset. So then we're going to have different experiences. And if you come with me in the morning, you're going to complain and not be as happy. And if I come with you in the evening, I'm not going to be as happy because I'll be cooler and I'm not going to enjoy it as much. So then it's not that it's one way or the other, but both of our experiences would be valid and we'll just have a different story. You're going to say, oh, wow, yeah, I went in the morning and it was miserable. I was just miserable. But then I went in the evening and it was so perfect. And I had a good time and I could be like opposite. And if you decide to people please and come with me in the morning, you're going to have a miserable experience. But if you do your thing and go in the evening, you're going to be happy and vice versa. So again, it depends. And I can tell you, oh my God, you're missing out so much not coming in the morning. But you can be like, no, not really. I enjoyed more in the evening. You are missing out. And again, the narrative is all based on personal preferences. And it can be the same with the food. If I love the Mediterranean diet, I could come back from the trip and tell everybody, oh my God, the food was amazing, the beach was wonderful, everything was so great. But if you uh, don't enjoy the Mediterranean diet and you're set on a certain style of food, uh, you're gonna be like, oh my God, the food was so weird, and there was seafood everywhere, and I hate seafood, and it was so hard to find anything decent to eat. So you see how it's not the thing, but it's our personal experience of the thing that creates narrative. And what is a little bit more interesting is how when we're born into a certain narrative, we may not even question it and believe that it's true. But sometimes when we get out of it, it's when we can begin to see it clearly, or when we're confronted with another narrative that kind of contradicts ours, and there's this cognitive dissonance. So it's important what kind of narrative we're buying. And to go further with it, if you get up and turn on the news and start your day with the news, your consciousness and attention is immediately attracted by a certain narrative, which could be promoting fear and scarcity and lack and misery and suffering. And then, because you're very susceptible in the morning, you can spend the rest of your day thinking about the things that you heard on the news and worrying about them and viewing the external world through that lens. And when you do that day after day after day, your perception of reality will not be real, it will be seen through the screen of the news. And it could be the same if you decide to go on a trip and you talk to somebody that has gone to that place and you repeat their experience, then you're not going to have an original experience. You're going to have a repetition. So when we are truly present, we can be free of a narrative, including the narrative of what kind of person we are, what are our preferences, what we like and dislike, because all of that is a narrative we've adopted of ourselves. And a lot of times that narrative is not based on who we have observed ourselves to be, but who other people have observed ourselves to be and how they perceive us and what is comfortable to them. Because it's hard for you to see yourself without a mirror, right? So it helps to go into other environments that are unfamiliar and challenge us in ways so we can display more of who we actually are and be freed from a certain narrative. That's why it's liberating when we travel, and especially when we travel by ourselves, if you're brave enough, that's it. Because we can leave the comforts of the familiar and the narrative and the people that know us, and we can experience ourselves in new ways, be in new situations, and see what comes out and how we react and respond. And that gives us more glimpse into who we truly are. And we can also be empowered and gain control of the narrative and decide, for example, be really inspired by a certain person and decide, you know what, I admire this person's courage or their sincerity or their honesty, and I want to adopt these qualities in myself and exhibit them. The narrative is a really, really deep topic, and seeing what kind of narrative we're living and from what kind of sources we're creating our own narrative, and what are we allowing to be the narrative that we view the world from. All of these are very, very important and deep questions. And to arrive at original perception, we need pure presence. And that's what Jesus meant when he said, unless you become like little children, you won't enter the kingdom of heaven. We need that original innocence. and that purity of simply perceiving for perception's sake without creating an elaborate narrative or trying to fit our perception into a narrative. And think about how much we suppress to fit certain narratives and how much we suppress to people please. For example, a person says, "Oh, I hate whatever, whatever," or "this is horrible," and we agree just to not upset anybody. And sometimes we agree even if we hold the opposite opinion about something, just because this person's opinion is so strong that we don't want to rock the boat. But let me tell you about the narrative of suffering on the vine and how Jesus came to teach, not that, but precisely what I'm sharing with you, empowerment to through seeing through the narrative and creating our own, and knowing that we are God in the sense that we have divinity inside of us. And it's not something that we need to look for on the outside, but it's something that we need to remember. And we're here to enjoy life and co create with the divine. And if we don't like something, we simply need to shift our attention away from it and focus on what we would like instead and create a beautiful narrative which brings heaven on earth.